We've got a dynamic interview with one of my special guests. This gentleman has been on Fox, CNN, a legend in the industry. He's been selling real estate since 1990s. With no further ado, Mr. Steve Hawks. Can you share a memorable moment, like your first big deal or a turning point in your career?
My first year was 87 deals and my second year was like 180. But you gotta remember, back then we used the Metro map, so the advantage I had...
Wait, you didn't have Apple Maps?
We'd have nothing. Nothing.
What does Steve like to do when he's not doing real estate or working?
Nowadays, just hang out with the kids. 20 years ago, different story.
What's your take on where the market's going for 2025?
2025 is the easiest ever. It's just deja vu of 2024. 2024, you can call that the great lie. The whole time, Jerome Powell was telling us that the reason why we gotta keep up rates is because
Steve Hawks, how are you doing today?
Thanks, man. I'm pretty good, man. How you doing?
Man, I'm outstanding.
Excellent, excellent.
It's 2025?
Quarter of a century already in.
So you've been selling real estate for 33 years, 4 years?
About, 25, 26, since 98.
98. That was 27 years. Awesome. And my 25-year anniversary in doing loans is this week.
Yeah.
I was 20 years old.
Yeah.
And turned 21 in the business. So really excited to be here.
Excellent.
So let's jump right into it. You ready? I'm just going to kind of jump into some things and we're going to have a little bit of fun today. So Steve's economic knowledge is so sharp that I'm convinced that Steve should be the next Fed chairman. And we're going to dive into that. So Steve, what is the best experience you've ever had in being on TV, or what's the best, thing that you've ever done as far as like getting information out to the people? Like what makes you tick?
The best way to, well, it depends on what decade you're talking about. In the 90s, the best way to get information to the people was TV and radio and the Yellow Pages. So most of my business came from the Yellow Pages from 1998 to 2005, 6. Most of the information we got out to people was the Yellow Pages and newspapers and TV and radio. And then obviously in 2007, 2008 and beyond, TV was still good, internet, radio, and now it's, basically mostly internet. People are mostly on the internet. But you have to hit the old ways of advertising also, because you still have, now it's like instead of, in the past, you could just advertise to one set of group, because the whole group from 20 to 80 was on the same platform. There was only TV, radio, and the Yellow Pages, right? And now there's, everybody's on different platforms, from not just on the internet, but you got different platforms on the internet. So you got some people are just on YouTube, some on Spotify, some, people just watch TV. They don't go on the internet, right? Well, they're homeowners too. So you have to hit everybody. You have to hit all different avenues now to hit all the different groups of homeowners and home buyers.
I love that. And, in my opinion, Steve Fox kind of revolutionized and pioneered some things and some changes in real estate. One of the most famous things that I think you pioneered was the 1% listing model. I think you were one of the first people to bring that to the nation.
Yeah, that was, and we actually, it was by accident, actually. So we started the 1%, I don't know, 2000, I can't remember the exact year, about 10, 12 years now. We had hundreds of short sales, not just here in Vegas, but across the country. We negotiated for people all across the country. And as the foreclosure laws came into place, the shortage of inventory started happening, right? Because because they weren't foreclosed anymore. So that created a shortage of inventory and the prices started coming back up. And so now we're looking at like, oh, wait a minute, the equity has come back up. If we just cut our commission, we can close this. Because, when you have a short sale, you're paying the people to negotiate $200 or $300 a month. You don't know if it's going to close. You don't know if the bank's going to say yes or no, right? You're hoping they do, and towards the end it was more likely, but you still didn't know. And a lot of times the bank cut the commission to 5% anyways, take it or leave it, sometimes 4%, depending on what the value was. So, and you're at the mercy of the bank because they had to approve the amount being less than what's owed. So what we start seeing is that the values were going above the back payments and the loan amount and the amount the bank would take. But the commissions weren't there, the 5%, 6%. So we started realizing, let's just cut our commissions The other agent on our side, hey, you want to take less? We just cut it. We cut it so we could get closed and make sure it was a sure deal. You got money in the pocket, right? You know for sure you're going to get paid. So we started cutting the commission in order to get the short sales approved because the equity was coming up and now it wasn't a short sale because the values had come up to enough. But if you're going to try and charge, 6 or 8 or 7%, at the time, a lot of people were charging 7. So if you're trying to get that much, then it was still upside down. So they said, you know what, just slash it. Let's get these things. Boom, 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 boom. We closed hundreds like that. And so once the short sale started wavering, I realized, wait a minute, there's thousands of people in their home right now that have wanted to sell in the last 3 to 5 years. There was over 100,000 people at that time in Vegas that had there's 100,000 homes, more than 100,000 homes, that had less than 10% equity. So if they wanted to sell it and someone was going to charge them 6%, they weren't going to be able to sell. So a lot of people. So when I did the 1%, we just got bombarded. I mean, flooded with calls. And then, technology wasn't as easy it was today to collect all those calls. We just got bombarded. We just started giving out listings. Boom, boom, boom. Take this, take this, take this. Because we were the only ones doing it at the time. And they couldn't go anywhere else because nobody else would do it.
That's fair.
So, hey, let's go sell my home. Well, look, I owe, $300,000 and the house is worth $330,000. Well, you're not going to reduce your commission from 6%. Now I got to do that. Okay, fine. They can't do it. So the family and friends couldn't even get those listings because their broker was forcing them to charge a certain amount of commission, which, well, if you charge that much, it's a short sale. Or I'm not coming out with anything, so why bother? And what these brokers and agents didn't realize is, hey, guess what those people were doing? Buying houses. So I was creating buyers. Yeah. So if they wanted to sell their house, they wanted to get a bigger house or a smaller house. Because remember, they were stuck in that house for 10 years. They were, average person back then wanted to sell in 5 years for whatever reason, right? So we had all these people who wanted to sell and buy, and they were, for years, nobody would do it. And then people started catching on, right? But that was the main reason why we started it. And then I saw a lot of these brokers that were complaining, doing complaints, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, this must be really impacting them because they're not allowing their agents to do it. So then what I did is I did a commercial on the Super Bowl for 1%. List your house for 1% on the Super Bowl. And from that time on, it just took off. So that was the thing that really blew it up, was that, and that there was a need that wasn't being fulfilled at that time that helped, like I said, over 100,000 homeowners had less than 10% equity in their house.
I love that. And so what I hear is that really you fell into the 1% listing model because you wanted to do the best for the client and you wanted to help the client. So really it wasn't about the money or the commission. It was about doing the best for your client and taking care of them at that time.
Well, it's like, you hear all these coaches and gurus. If you help someone, it's going to help you. At that time, we were helping the client, but if we didn't do that and help the client, they wouldn't have been able to close either. So it was a true win-win for them, because they didn't have a short sale or they got out of their house. They got to get the house that they wanted. And also we were getting paid commission too. Yeah, it might not have been the traditional one or what people might say is the standard, but they were buying houses with us. So when you look at the whole, we wouldn't have had those buyers if we wouldn't have done that on the sell. So those homeowners were being, we were helping them, doing good by them, but in the return, they were also helping us by using us, not now, just also in the future. I mean, I get calls all the time from people that I helped sell their house in 2010, 2011, 2008. They remember us because they knew back then nobody would help them.
Excellent. And honestly, that morphed a little bit. And then you still have the 1% listing, but it was like a 1% you get this much value, 2% you get this much value, 3%. So you actually had this really cool listing agreement that had like, pick your box of how much, do you want this service, or this service? But I think you closed like over 1,000 listings or plus in 1 year or a couple of years. You had like 1,000 listing back-to-back transactions, like literally Steve Hawks closed these listings in his name. Is that right? We've done, I'm not sure the number, but I've done over 5,000 myself. And when I give somebody a lead, I put that in their name. So a lot of people they'll take everybody's public ID and put it on their name. When you see that I sold a house, that was me. Like when someone calls
when someone gets a lead from me, they get to put it in their name. They let them, that way when the consumers are looking to see if you're working with a good agent, they can see that that person closed deals. So I don't know why the MLS allows people to put stuff in other people's names, but whatever, that's not my problem. But yeah, when you see a listing I worked on, I talked to those people. A lot of these agents, or never even talked to a consumer, but it's under their name, which Inman did a story on that, on how, using public IDs is actually hurting the industry, and it's hurting the rankings, and it's hurting people. It's hurting the consumers being able to tell if they're working with a good agent or not.
And that's a great topic. I'm gonna kind of dabble off that topic, but I love it, and I could go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I don't know if I really want to right now. But in building a connection, we've done some really great things together. I actually got the opportunity to become, when I was at Countrywide Home Loans, to become your REO agent when the REO era was there. The bank was feeding you listings to get them on the market and get them sold. And I had the opportunity to support you. We had a lot of great success those years. And I was just young growing up, and like, man, I get to work with Steve Hawk. So it was great. And throughout that, I was always accountable to you. And so what inspired you to dive into real estate is a curious question I have.
Oh, so that's what, 96, 97, 97, 98, somewhere around there. I was living in California, 20, 30 minutes from the beach. There's no reason I would want to come to Vegas, right? So I worked at this company called Airborne Express, which is like FedEx, and I was a district sales manager, and they wanted me to come out. I did it in Southern California, and then I came out here, and they wanted me to open up Vegas because they didn't have a territory up here. So I opened it up. I said I'll do it for a year and then go back to California. Because if you live in California, especially by the beach, I mean, this is, at that time, this is hell. Right? I mean, you got 70 degrees, 75, 80 degree weather. It's nice, breezy, all that. Come on, you can't beat the California weather. And then after doing that for a year, one of my friends was doing mortgages and said, hey, you should do real estate. I'm like, I'm gonna do real estate. I have no desire to do it. But then he said, do this, look at this, watch this. I go, okay, here, I'll do it while I'm here. So I got my real estate license, because even back then, people say you gotta make your real estate license harder. Even back then, it was easy to get. It's always been easy to get your real estate license. So I got my real estate license, I think, in like 30 days, wherever it was. I didn't even study for the state one. I mean, my degree was in finance real estate, so it wasn't that hard. So I took the national one, whatever. Anyways, it took me 30 days to get my license. And so then I started writing contracts. And the first contract I said, I go, well, how do you do this? He's like, I don't know. Here, copy this. So it was an 80-20 seller financing. Remember those?
Yeah.
It was an 80-20.
Yeah, I do.
So I had my old financial calculator from college. I pulled that back up, did an 80-20 seller carryback. And that was my first deal. I think it was $140,000 or $150,000, which was above the average back then. It was a seller carryback where the seller carries the 20%. And it doesn't really matter what it pays for back then. And after that, I started doing it. And then 2 years, I was doing both jobs. It was perfect because I had a company car and a company phone. Back then, phones were expensive. I think it was like $100 for like 100 minutes or something like that. It was you paid by the minute.
I think it was a big box, and it had like a shoulder strap.
Not that old. Those Nokias that clicked up and down.
Okay. Okay.
And
StarTech, the flip phone, StarTech.
That came after. That was more like 2000. So after 2 years of doing that, I did good at Airborne Express, so they wanted to promote me to other places. I kept on turning down the promotions because the real estate thing was working out pretty good. And then I had a sales meeting in Florida, and I had 8 or 9 closings that week. It was May, 8 or 9 closings in 1 week. And I didn't have an assistant. I didn't have nothing back then because it was a lot easier. It was 2 pagers. There was no HOA. All this nonsense we do now is crazy. So it wasn't like that hard to do. And so I canceled on the sales meeting. So I knew, look, if I canceled the sales meeting, going to the sales award thing, and all the other promotions that I turned down, I knew I was probably they're gonna know something's up. So I just quit. And the way I looked at it, I said, look, if I don't close another house the rest of the year, I'm still gonna make more money at real estate this week than I will the rest of the year on that. So that's when I started, just flipped over and started doing real estate full time. Actually, I was doing it full time then, technically, but I still had 2 jobs. For my first 2 years, I had 2 jobs, real estate and and Airborne Express. And that's why I recommend to people, if you can do both jobs the same, why would you quit your other job, especially when your job brings in leads? All these brokers and coaches telling their agents to, quit your job. Well, if you're in Vegas and you're working at the Strip making 150 grand a year at night, why would you quit your job? That's the dumbest thing in the world. You get benefits, you get good money, and the hours you're working over there aren't going to interfere with you working real estate. Plus, it's a great source of leads. So that's why Vegas is unique among all cities, because there's very few cities. I'm sure there's a couple, but there's very few cities that you can. Look, I can go right across the street to this local bar, and the bartenders are making over 100 grand. That don't happen anywhere, right? You go on the Strip, my friends who work at the pools work 6 months, make 200 grand a year.
Yeah.
Why would you quit that job?
I wouldn't.
No.
I mean, if it's good for you, like you said, benefits, and if it's a balance.
And it brings leads. It brings leads.
And
you don't have to be with technology today and, showing agents. You don't need to be available 24/7. As long as you have access to that phone and you can get to them and say, hey, I can take care of that. But nobody, we're not doctors that need to be on call, you know what I'm saying? So if you have that other job, and also it helps you because you don't have commission breath. So if it closes, it closes, you know what? But buyers can sense that, sellers can sense that.
Awesome. And obviously you made your path and then you were able to leave that. Can you share a memorable moment, like your first big deal or a turning point in your career?
Probably just the turning point was why I didn't make a decision. Am I going to stay here or go back to California? And that was it.
Then you hit like 310 deals in 1 year or something like that?
Yeah. During the REO days, more than that. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, I hit a lot. My first year was 87 deals, and my second year was like 180, somewhere there. But you got to remember, back then we used the Metro map. So the advantage I had was in LA, I was doing commercial real estate, so I had to memorize the freeways pretty much. And the streets out in LA, you could memorize as much as you could. So when I came here, it was super easy to memorize everything because it was basically the first major city that was built in the 20th century. So everything was grid. So it was super easy to memorize stuff. So in Green Valley, you got to remember, there was no 215 then. And to get to the west side, you took Tropicana. So everything was a grid. And the farthest you went out, I think, was Cheyenne. So the advantage I had when showing clients is I pretty much memorized everything. So when I put out the sheets, I could memorize where to go. And that was a big deal because a lot of agents were flipping through this whole map thing, which I already learned. That was like one of the hardest part of real estate at the time was learning how to use the Metro map, right? So you had to do the night before, you had to map out all your stuff. Well, after a few months, I was able to memorize. Plus the other job I had to learn the city anyway, so it helped. Memorizing the city was pretty easy because it was all grid. So when buyers got in my car and I boom, 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 it made me look better than I really was because I knew how to get there. Because they're used to looking at people going, flipping maps and stuff and like this. I would, how did you do it? How did you do it?
Wait, you didn't have Apple Maps?
We'd had nothing. Nothing.
So you flipped through, you were like, I got to go over here. So you had your little map. And Vegas is built great. I mean, honestly, the grids, like you say, northeast, southwest. There's even a little funny thing, like it out in the southwest, it starts out in Antelope, but it goes Antelope, Buffalo, Cimarron, Durango. Like they did A, B, C, D,
that didn't exist
with streets, but very funny thing. So the real estate market's always evolving, and you have a famous thing, the crystal ball. I'm sure you're already working on it for 2025. I'm probably going to, try to get a sneak peek into what your visions are today. Hope you don't mind sharing some of that. So as we head into this market, what's your take on where the market's going for 2025?
2025 is the easiest ever. It's just deja vu of 2024. Ain't nothing going to change, right? 2024, you can call that the great lie. So now we're realizing what us in the trenches, loan officers and realtors, we already knew. The job numbers are fake. The inflation numbers are fake. And now, all of a sudden, that the election's over, we're starting to realize that. Now we're talking about stagflation. Well, we talked about stagflation at the last crystal ball in 2024. Look, wait, where are all these jobs coming from? And then every single quarter, they're getting revised. They revised down 800,000. And then quarter two, now they're revising that. They said that there was 650,000 jobs created. Well, now they're revising it to guess what they're revising it to now? Now they're talking about it was negative. Wait a minute. The whole time, Jerome Powell was telling us that the reason why we got to keep up rates is because the job market is so good. Well, now we're realizing, no, the job market is garbage because we're looking at all this job growth that didn't exist. And then the jobs that did come were government jobs. So now we have high prices and a bad job market. And that's the truth. And remember, all these news, mainstream media is telling everybody, oh, you know what? We have 60% of the public thinks that we're in a recession. Why do they think that? Why do they think that? Because they were living it, you dummies. And remember how everyone said, oh, the economy was good, the economy was great. Well, now we know that it wasn't. And guess what? Mainstream media was wrong. All these newscasts saying, oh, we don't know why the public thinks it. We're not in a recession. Look, we're not in a recession. Well, look, now we know that we were in a recession. We are in a recession. And the only people that aren't in a recession are the ones that own assets. Because you don't own assets if you don't own stock, if you don't own real estate, if you don't own crypto. Guess what? This is very tough times for you because food's gone through the roof. Insurance has gone through the roof. Yep. Cars have gone through the roof. Your rent's gone through the roof. And yet they tell you inflation's 2.5%. Huh?
A $16 sandwich that used to be $9.99.
2.5%. And they wonder why all these governments are collapsing right now. You know what? You look at France. France government is collapsing. Not the country, the government. Germany is collapsing. We saw it happen in Canada. When I say collapsing, it means their form of government, the prime minister, and they can't push anything forward because there's so much confusion right now. So you have, this hasn't happened since World War II. You got Canada. You saw it happen with Trudeau. Yep. Germany's a mess. They don't know. They're on the verge of a huge recession, possibly depression because of the energy costs of Ukraine. And you got France. That's a joke. You have South Korea that just impeached their president. And what do all these countries, and Argentina, don't forget Argentina about a year ago, what do all these countries have in common? Their government and their central banks were telling their people, the economy's great. We're not in a recession. Inflation is only 2 or 3%. Everything's great. And guess what? All those governments are getting ousted right now because the people know that they're lying. And that's what we're seeing in America right now. People are realizing, wait a minute. You told me inflation was 2.5%. You told me inflation was transitory. Well, transitory? What the hell is going on? I can't feed my children. I can't afford rent. I can't afford insurance. I can't go to work because I can't afford childcare. It doesn't make sense. People are wondering why people don't want to travel to their office. They can't afford childcare. That's why.
I love that. And I mean, really, honestly, it kind of brings me to another question that I don't have here. However, I made a prediction that the 10-year treasury was going to come down into the mid threes. And for some reason, since the Fed cut the rate, which was one of the best marketing pieces in America, like, oh, they cut the rate. Oh, we cut the rate. We're going to cut it even more for the 2025 pre-election. Post-election, like, oh, I don't know if we're going to do any cuts. But right now we have a 10-year treasury sitting, what, like 4.6, 4.7 today?
Yeah.
Does that seem real to you, or should it be in the threes? I mean, we just saw China cut their treasury. Obviously, in past history, if they cut their treasury, ours turns around and goes the other way. Why? You know, we could get into that. But do you believe that our 10-year treasury should be this high right now?
Well, first of all, the Fed has been wrong forever. I mean, look at, nobody called it. Go back 20 years, go back 30 years, 40 years. How many times has the Fed called recession? Zero. None. They don't get it right. They don't know what they're doing. And this is all the culmination of the past 40 years of the Fed on steroids. They told you the inflation was transitory. That was complete garbage. And last year, if you remember, at the beginning of last year, last December of 2023, they said they're going to reduce the interest rate 4 to 6 times. Remember? In 2023, well, what happened in 2024? They changed their tune real quick.
Yeah.
And then they said they were going to reduce the rate this year. A few months ago, they said they're going to do it 4 to 5 times. Well, they've already changed story on that. They shouldn't have reduced the rates before the election. They did that to help the election. But what it actually did is made it worse, and it exposed them. Wait a minute. Why did you reduce the interest rates twice last year when you knew inflation was still sticky and going up, and you knew the job numbers weren't really accurate? These guys are either lying to us or they're such in a bubble, because don't forget, all these people making these decisions, when they go to their parties, all their people are saying, oh, you're doing a great job. You're doing a great job. Look how much money I made, because they're all the elite. They all have hundreds of millions of dollars or millions of dollars at least in the stock market, their asset. Guess what? They're making a killing, because the more money they print and the more these assets go up, the more value they're worth. So these guys are out of touch with the average person, and that's why they lost the election.
Amen to that. And so, and honestly, I'm really curious. Like, I think Trump's going to be a really good thing for our real estate market coming on board. And I think that a lot of people are touting that we're going to be flat and things aren't going to change. However, Trump's going to come in and abolish the DEI. He's going to replace the FHFA director. That's who governs mortgages and financing. I'm just curious, though. We've sent about $63 billion or maybe even a little bit more to Ukraine this year or last year in 2024. Do you not think that that money should go into the mortgage bonds?
Well,
Like,
with
why aren't we giving this back to Americans? Why aren't we putting $63 billion into the mortgage bonds and dropping rates to the 5.875, 5.75? Because, I mean, we've seen what the desirable palette is. I don't think that rates need to be 3 and 4 for people to do a good job and be able to afford their home. But when we see rates in the 5s, people can digest that and make moves. And some of the biggest money ever made was based off of rates that were in the 5s. So, like, what's your take on that?
So the first thing they could do is get rid of all this regulation for loan officers. The way he can make change real quick is get rid of all this regulation that is hurting. The biggest problem right now is the spread between the 10-year and the mortgage rates. And the reason why is because the banks and mortgage companies, they got to charge all this money to cover all this cost that regulation is happening. I mean, look how hard it is for you guys to hire new people when you get busy. So what does that mean? It's gonna be harder to hire people, so you're gonna keep people on longer, and you're just gonna send that cost to what? The margin. This is our cost of doing business. And you guys shouldn't have a cap. If a lender wants to make 5 points, let them make 5 points. We're in the age of the internet. Buyers can know. 99.9% of the buyers are not going to get taken advantage of because some loan officer charges them extra points to make extra money. Because do you know what they're going to do? They're going to yeah. And guess what? If they allow loan officers to make more money, they're going to have more loan officers helping people get their credit repaired. And you know what? I'm going to help you do this, but this is what I charge. Right now, these mortgage companies or my loan officer friends, I mean, there's a lot of people that are not able to get houses because nobody wants to do the loan because you can't make no money doing it.
Well, and I mean, there's 50.
That's the big banks too.
We were up to 38% early last year in attrition in loans and lending, and I really believe, like, when the numbers come out, because we just had renewals of our licenses, I really think we're about to 54 to 58% attrition in my business. I mean, there's maybe 40% of us left now. Granted, the majority of those people came into the business in the last 5 years. Some of them, unfortunately, were, bartenders or doing other things and thought they could come in and make some fast money. I saw a lot of them go start to sell solar. Not knocking anybody that's selling solar. I know that you have some LOs that are, hustling hard.
LO should do solar and loans right now.
I don't agree with you on that because I'm not going to go out as a used car salesman. So I appreciate that, and I can do that. And you offered me to come in and try to help with that, and I love that about you, always helping out people to make money. So if you were the Fed, seriously,
real quick on the solar.
What you got?
It goes back to that short sale where we're talking about if you can help people save money. People that got solar 3, 4, 5 years ago, it's actually helped the value of their house when they're competing against other, because their solar payment is so much lower than the solar today plus the power. We know one thing for sure: the cost of power is going to go through the roof. Number one, they already told you that. Number two, they passed that law about 2 years ago where it has to be, I think 50% has to be renewable energy by 2035. But the big one, the big daddy of them all is AI. AI takes up a ton of power.
Yep.
So all those AI companies that are coming to Vegas are going to what? They're going to soak up that power. So power is going to go through the roof, not just because of those two things, but now it's going to be a huge, huge, huge commodity. So the quicker you get it on your roof, the quicker you get to lock in that rate. And look what happened to California. Look at these people paying these power bills in California. The same situation is happening and going to continue to happen in Las Vegas. But
I personally had a $724 power bill this summer. Mind you, I have a 20-SEER AC unit updated. I've updated all of my pool equipment. And here Warren Buffett is. Warren Buffett's just continuing to increase the power grid here at Nevada Power. Like, you didn't make enough money, buddy? Like, it's gouging. It's really gouging.
Well, they have to raise the power because they have to start building the green energy stuff per the law that we passed in 2002.
Now, Trump just mentioned the other day, he's signing away all that power stuff day one.
That's a state law. It's 2022. That's a state law that Nevada passed it. It's another story, but that's a state law that Trump the president has nothing to do with that.
I love it. And so, like, seriously, like, if you were the Fed,
Mm-hmm.
what would be the first thing that you would do to stabilize the housing market?
So the first thing you got to do right now, and this isn't my idea, this is some theory that these guys are talking about. This has happened before. All you got to do is go do what Paul Volcker did. We need pain. Unfortunately, the only way you clean this up is like Tony Robbins says too. You need winter. We haven't had a winter in real estate since 2010. And what I mean by that, we had a similar situation that was going, actually, a very similar situation in the 70s. And when Reagan took over, his first 12 to 18 months, they hated him. They thought he was one of the worst presidents ever because he was going supply side economics, build. And at the same time, Paul Volcker, who was the last good Fed chairman, raised the rates crazy, raised them up to like 17 or 18%. You don't have to do 17, 18% today to get the same impact because stuff was so cheap back then. Now you only have to jam them up to maybe 6 or 6.5. And what that does is that kills everything, right? That's the only way you're going to do it. But and I don't think he's going to, Trump doesn't want that because he's going to have about 12 to 18 months of really bad economy. But it flushes out the system. It reduces the prices on everything. It puts stuff back to where it should originally be priced at with all this inflated money. And if you don't do that, you're just going to have a bigger correction and a bigger disaster later on down the road. But in the meantime, the pain is slowly. So right now, like 2008, there was a Band-Aid or your hand, you want a nail going through or hitting a nail or a Band-Aid. In 2008, it went like this. Right now, the Band-Aid is coming like real slow. Because they're not correcting it. And that's why you're seeing people in the same situation they were in 2008, just different scenarios. People in 2008, they couldn't afford their bills because they weren't making as much money, or they lost their job, or their house went down, or their whatever, right? Today, people can't pay their bills, not because they lost their job, because everything's gone up, too expensive. So now you have a job and you still can't pay your bills. And that's why prices have to come down and income's got to stay close to the same. And the writing's on the wall. You got to do what Paul Volcker did in the early 80s, or you're going to have what we're seeing right now. And what Trump can do is deregulate everything and start adding a more supply of everything. Build more cars, build more houses, provide more food, provide more power, provide more electricity. Because the number one thing that is impacting housing right now is not rates, not insurance, is supply. Because if you have a high supply and high rates, prices are going to come down. And be more affordable.
And we have the largest place of family formations happening in history. I mean, we have more families being started because all of the baby boomers' kids are moving out of their houses. I mean, you've got a place where you've got the family starting, but we don't have the completions for housings happening. Again, I mean, what has it been, 7-8 years since you've had more housing completions than families forming? So that comes to that supply and demand, and they can't build them fast enough. I mean, as much as the builders are overpricing houses, gouging clients. I saw $120,000 in upgrade charges on a home the other day that I probably could get done for $75 if I just did it on my own outside of the house, but packaged it in, right? So, I mean, you just said something, and it's interesting to me because I look at the United States and as much like Venezuela, we've printed so much money. And what they did there is that they printed all this money and they tried to prevent a reverse crash, but all the values went up. How, and I'm conflicted with this because I believe real estate's going to double in the next 5 to 7 years, the values. I think Vegas is set for 150% because we can't be behind the rest of the nation and be the hottest metropolis area that all these bigger metropolis areas want to come to, and metropolitan areas, excuse me. And so are you predicting that real estate's going to go up, stay flat, or go down? Because I see from the decades that it's going to double, if not even a little bit more. I mean, how do you print this much money and then not have that value go back into?
Are they going now? Real value now? If they keep on increasing the money supply, it's just going to go up. But are you really making money after inflation? Right. So you made $100,000 on your house. Oh, that's great. Well, now you take that $100,000 out. Well, what are you going to do with it today compared to 2019? What do you get for $100,000 You can't even get a lot of these luxury SUVs now for 100 grand, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Back then you could buy 2. So you got to look at, and people right now, they're like, oh yeah, I got $200,000 or $300,000 equity in my house. Well, what good is that doing you? Let me tell you what it's doing you. It's costing more in house insurance. It's costing you more in property taxes. So yeah, you made 100 grand, but over 10 years, you're going to pay more in house insurance. You're going to pay more in property taxes. So that's eating away at your equity that, if the house only went up 50 grand and you kept your costs down, you'd still be making the same amount of money at the end of the day. So the biggest threat to, one of the, not the biggest, but one of the threats to real estate right now is house insurance, property insurance. A lot of insurance companies are pulling out of Nevada now. A lot of them are doing houses built before the year 2000. And a lot of the houses that were built in 2005 now, they're starting to not insure those, which is causing the insurance cost to go up. So even if the rates drop a little, we're not as bad as California and Florida, but even if the rates drop a little, the insurance is offsetting that, the house insurance. So we know for a fact that house insurance and car insurance is going to go up quite a bit in the next 12 to 14 months.
I've already seen it, and it's terrible. I mean, honestly, these insurance companies that have made millions of dollars over the year, over the years. I got that notice like, hi, we're pulling out of Nevada from my insurance company that I've had for 17 years. Oh, and by the way, we're not going to give you that cash back program that we were giving you for all these years. And it's funny because the insurance company sold a couple of years ago to quote unquote Canadians. But it's really odd, I don't think a Canadian owns it. I think some oil money owns it, and they just kind of a shelter through the Canadian company, so it's really interesting insurance. So you see insurances continuing to increase,
especially what's going on in California right now. And what's going on in California, a top factor that's going to impact the Vegas market, besides supply, is what happens in California. And right now, you have tons of things, but I'll make a list of that's going on in California. So the number one reason why Vegas real estate has gone up so much the last 10, 15 years, especially the last 5, besides the money supply, would be people from California.
Yeah, they're moving here.
60-70% of even they say it's like 30 or 40 or 50%, whatever. It's about 60 or 70% because a lot of people come here, rent or stay for a year or 2, and then they buy and they're considered locals. No, those aren't locals. Those are people that just came here for a year or 2. So when you take that into account, you're probably looking at 60 to 70, 80% of the people that are buying are from California.
So as a buyer, as a consumer, what is something that a consumer could do today to kind of insulate themselves from this? Like, do they need to buy? I mean, you've got clients, homeowners that have more equity than they've ever had in their homes. Is it like, what do you think they could do to protect themselves?
So it depends. It depends on your situation. So if you're a buyer right now, and you want a home and it's $3,500, $4,000, but you can rent it for $2,000, yeah, that's a big deal. I mean, I would rent, right? But is that rent going to go up? Or are these costs going to come down? A lot of people that bought a few years ago, we're seeing now they can't afford their house right now, right? They're getting loan modifications because they can't afford their house because they bought it. Their DTI was at the max, right? They thought their payment was going to come down. Well, even if the rates come down and they refinance, their payment is still going to go up because the property taxes and insurance, especially the house insurance. So that's going to negate what they thought was going to happen. And then we have to go back to the cost of living. Their cost of living has gone up. So the money that they thought they're going to be handle is not happening. So that's keeping people in the houses. In the past, people would sell their house, right? I can't afford it, but now they get loan modifications. So they stay in that house, and that's the stuff like that is keeping transactions down. But if you can afford it, you definitely want to get into a house because it locks in your payment, right? Because rents are probably going to go up eventually. Like you said, there's a shortage. In Nevada, building in Nevada, all the regulations were a few steps below California. Ask any builder or any construction person out here how ridiculous it is now to get permits and all this. And I mean, come on, man, make it easy. The reason why you see affordability coming back to Texas and Florida and Arizona is because it's easy to build. They build a lot of homes out there. That's what we should be building, a ton of homes out here, and we're not.
Well, and that brings me to my next question. Are we going to see a foreclosure era on homes, or are we going to see a foreclosure era on cars? Because, I mean, if you have a car, and here's the biggest thing I saw during the foreclosure era of homes, is that I bought this house for $400,000 in 2008, and I thought I was going to make $100,000 because Joe at work told me that he just made $100,000 in the last 6 months. So I bought this house, and then all of a sudden, fast forward into 2009 and 10, and the house is worth $225,000, and I've got this high payment with no sight in mind of me actually coming out of this investment, making money. So I walk away from it, and so I see this kind of happening, and I might be wrong, but I mean, this is why I'm asking you. I see this happening in the car side, like you said, cars that used to be $60,000 fully loaded are $108,000 now, and they're not at a 4% rate. They're at a 8% rate, and here you are. You're not on and back in 2008, 9, and 10, I think the longest loan we had was a 5-year loan. Most were like 3 or 4. Now they have a 7-year loan. It doesn't even cover the warranty. So I mean, like, here I am sitting with this $1,200 beast with this $600 large gas payment. I mean, and I got my house here that's got all this equity. Do I just go buy another car and buy and bail on the car? Like, are we going to see this happen a lot here?
So the foreclosure ways for houses, never going to see that again, because all these modifications and there's too many reasons why. I mean,
forbearances.
Just
banks.
watch Foreclosure City, and you'll see the difference between what's happening then and now.
Foreclosure City. We're going to get you a link for this. It'll be in the bottom if you want to get access to this. I'm sure Steve will be able to get it to you one way or another. But this is a great thing to look at. Is this on YouTube or?
This is from 2000. No, this was a documentary that was done in 2010 or 2012, and when people that weren't around then, when they watch this, they go, oh, I see the difference now. I see the difference now. I see what's going on. And then after this happened, they put these foreclosure laws in and these modification programs that they did. That's where it all started. And like I said back then, once you start doing this, it's never going away. And today, those people that you're talking about that can't afford their houses, they do loan modifications and principal reductions. So it's become a way to keep people in their houses. And that's one reason why the affordability index is so bad right now, is because there's no flushing out, there's no winter coming. But back to your question about the cars, about the buying and the bail on the cars, 100%. And usually when you're behind on your car at 30 days, they would start to repo. But a lot of the lenders now are not repoing the cars in the normal time frame because they don't want people turning their cars back in. Because guess what? When people start realizing that, oh, I owe 60 grand on this car, I can go buy another one for 20 grand, they're going to let it go. How do we know this? Because that's what caused the foreclosure crisis. Most of the people that got foreclosed on, especially the last 2 or 3 years, most of them, at least 50%, they could afford to keep on paying. But they're like, wait a minute, why would I keep on paying this when I can go buy one for half the price, sometimes 30 to 40% of the price, or I can just let this one go and go rent for 2 or 3 grand less a month. So the banks know that the consumers are quibbling that, but plus you have to look at you're right on the money. Look at Stellantis, who owns Jeep and Chrysler and Dodge. They might not make it. Stellantis owns all those three. They're getting killed right now. Go look at their stock. Nissan was on the verge of collapse. They had to merge with Honda. Volkswagen, for the first time ever, was going to lay off people in Germany. That's one reason why Germany is on the verge of collapse right now, their economy. Volkswagen's getting crushed right now because of the car thing. They put all these people into upside down cars. Oh, bring in your used car. You still owe 3 grand, 4 grand on it. You're upside down 4 grand. No problem. We're going to put that 4 grand on this car. And we're going to do a 7-8 year loan. Well, now that's coming home to roost because now they're so upside down on this car, they can't put that money onto another car. That's why a lot of these dealerships are tight right now.
So you think you're going to see a larger increase in foreclosures on cars or
repos on cars? It depends. If the banks do the same strategy they do on homes and let the people keep their cars for longer without paying, or they adjust their payments, then no, because the banks, especially the credit unions, want to keep the car prices here, because if the car prices, they're going to have a flood.
Okay. Are you seeing short sales again in the market?
No.
Okay.
Very
cool. And so we're going to kind of shift a little bit, more from the consumer to agents, because I mean, you have been in this for a long time, and there's a lot of young agents. Some of them I've been working with, helping them raise up. They might be watching this today. And what's one mistake that you see new agents making, and how could they avoid it?
So two separate things. So the number one mistake that agents make is their first few years or any time, they put their production in somebody else's name. You're just handicapped. I mean, you're just destroying any future you have, because when people start looking and saying, hey, look how many deals I did. Well, I just looked. The MLS says 0 and these sites say 0, because there's so many sites now that just take them data from the MLS. Oh, I put them in somebody else's name. Well, if I put them in somebody else's name, then you're not very knowledgeable, because why are you putting in somebody else's name? So there's no good excuse to have that put in. So that's one of the biggest things new agents is, if you're going to work for a team or a company, make sure that production is going under your name. So when people do call you, they do contact you, it looks like you've done business. Especially 3-4 years down the road, you're going to say, oh, all my deals were in somebody else's name. Yeah, sure, right. I just sold this $4 million house. Well, I don't see it. Oh, it's in that one's name. Oh, sure, you sold it. Well, wait a minute. Why did you put it in that person's name? Obviously, you don't have the skill and knowledge to do it. That's what the consumers are thinking. When actually that agent does have more skill, does have more knowledge, many times in the person's name they put it in.
So take back your own deals and put them in your public ID. Don't work on a team that's going to take away and put all your deals underneath that person's name. It's just hurting you. And when people, especially in the internet part, when people are looking at the internet, they see how many deals, and now most of the sites are getting the deals from the MLS, the production. And the other thing is the SOI. If you're in Las Vegas, a lot of these coaches are saying, concentrate on your SOI, work on your SOI. Well, if most of the buyers are come from California and most of the people in Vegas can't sell their house, working your SOI is going to be very discouraging. So you're going to have to start going to California and doing seminars there and getting a base there, working with the realtors there. Hey, is there a pocket of area right now that you could think of that those people are probably going to be coming to Vegas? There's a few pockets right now you can think of in California. That's what we've been doing, and that's the best source of buyers is hitting California. For my whole career, I was able to work my SOI, and if I sold them a house, okay, cool. 3 to 5 years, 3 to 6 years, I know they're going to buy it. They're going to sell that and buy another house with me, right? Right.
Well, guess what? Now that's 13 years. So every time someone buys a house with me, I gotta wait 13 years for them to buy or sell again. Look at all the people that are locals that bought between 2010 and 2020. They couldn't buy that house today.
Fair.
They couldn't buy even at the 4% interest rates. Most of them couldn't buy that house today. In fact, I think one of these studies just came out that only 8% of the people could buy the house today.
Especially at these rates. And it's really interesting because another study just came out that says that last year we went from the average home buyer being 33 to 36. Now, Realtor.com, and I think
that was the first time home buyer, right? With the average age is 56. Was the average age 50?
At Realtor. Now they just said the average age is 62 years old that's buying, and most of them are buying cash. So they're not even financing. So you've got this window of 33 to 53 or 62 that they're not even financing, and the person that's buying is the cash buyer. Are you seeing more cash buyers or financed buyers right now in this market?
Well, yeah, that age is because they have so much cash. Why? Because they bought assets, 10, 15 years ago, didn't do nothing, right? And they skyrocketed. Like stuff, I'm not a genius. I bought stocks a few years ago and they went up. Why? Because I'm a genius? No, because they increased the money supply. I'm no genius. All these gurus out there, look how much money you made. You didn't make no money. You increased the money supply, so the assets you bought just because you bought them went up. You didn't do any analysts to do it. They increased the money supply, assets go up, so you look like a guru. That's it. And now those people that bought assets are able to cash out and go buy other assets, and people that didn't have assets to get that cash, it's a hard time to get their down payment.
Good point. What's the secret to staying ahead in such a competitive market today?
You just got to look at the patterns and the cycles, the trends, and you try and get ahead of that. And when you've been doing it as long as we have, it's.
So what is a cycle or a trend today?
Well, we've had about four there was one from 2000 to 2004, 2004 to 2010, 2010 to 2015, 2015 to 2020, and 2020 to 2022, and now 2023. So 2024, the mid 2023, and now is a new trend, new cycle, which you've just been talking about. My SOI in Vegas, most of them can't buy or sell right now, and it's not going to change anytime soon because of the dynamics we've talked about. And so you have to switch up and change to creating buyers from other areas. And, unfortunately for loan officers, new homes have a huge advantage right now, as you know. And they're building supply. They're buying down the rate that resale homes can't do.
So if you buy a home this year in Las Vegas, Nevada, what is your prediction? How much is that property going to go up from 2025 to 2027?
So depending what price range, right?
Fair answer.
So if they increase the money supply by 10%, your house is probably going to go up 10%. Right? So just look at the money supply. Whatever they plan on doing with the money supply is probably what's going to correlate to what your house price is.
Let's say they didn't print another dollar.
Well, that's not going to happen. But if they did print another dollar, then we knew, we would know if they did increase the money supply, we would know that the prices would fall.
Okay.
But they're not going to do that. They can't do that. Do you know that 2025 so far is the worst yet for our deficit? And you got to remember, Steve, it's only been, 2 weeks? Week? No. The U.S. fiscal 2025 started a few months ago. So we've been in the U.S. debt for 2025 started, I think, 3 or 4 months ago. So the fiscal year started 3 or 4 months ago. So yeah, it's January 2025, but the fiscal year already started. So the debt is going through the roof right now. And they're printing even more money.
Okay.
And because these other countries are collapsing and their values are dropping, it gives the Fed in the U.S. the ability to print more money without the same negative effect if those other currencies were stronger. So those other currencies are like China. I've been talking about this. China is a complete disaster, and that allows the Fed to print more money. But look what Argentina did. Google what Argentina did in the last year. It's amazing.
Okay. Google what Argentina did in the last year, and we'll have to pick on
their
that.
debt. So
I really want to thank you for all of that great information. Your brain is just impeccably genius. So I'm going to ask you a couple quick questions, quick fires. You ready? What does Steve like to do when he's not doing real estate or working?
Just nowadays, just hang out with the kids. 20 years ago, different story.
And what do you do when you hang out? Do you go to parks or what do you do in Vegas, man?
There's
sports
there's sports, there's soccer, there's arcades, there's the video games, there's tons of parks. Some of the best parks in the country are here in Las Vegas. You got water parks. I think that water park won one of the best 5 in the country. So
Cowabunga Bay?
One of them, yeah. The kids like
phenomenal,
that.
Right?
So
I try to go there once a week with my daughter as well. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. It really, that break when you get to go with them, and just hang out and be 5 years old with them is one of the funnest things that I think I could ever do. Who's your favorite sports team in Las Vegas right now?
In Las Vegas, it used to be the Oakland Raiders. It used to be the Los Angeles Raiders, Oakland Raiders, and then Las Vegas Raiders. But right now, you got to go with the Golden Knights, man. I mean, the Raiders.
Vegas born, baby.
I feel like, I'm from LA, so obviously Dodgers and whatever. But, man, those Raiders, they really, the Raiders used to be one of the winningest professional franchises in sports at the time. They had the winningest percentage. That's why you see commitment to excellence. The reason why you see commitment to excellence of the Raiders is because they were the winningest franchise, more than the Celtics, more than the Lakers, more than the Cowboys, up until about probably late 90s, early 2000s. They had the 80s, that's why they did that. The 70s, 80s, they were commitment to excellence.
Tom Brady's here. Yeah, we're about to rebuild. We're about to win a championship in the next 3 or 4 years. I mean, Brady touches anything, and here comes Super Bowls, bro.
Well,
Brady's here.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
What's the best piece of advice that you've ever received? And who is that from?
Just probably many. Just perseverance. Just keep going. Show up.
Got to roll with the punches. Show up. I like that. Show up. Show off.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, I mean that's why I tell agents, show up. I've over the 25 years, I've seen so many agents that were at the office at a certain time, or they're working when other people weren't, and they made a huge connection in their real estate to change their career.
I love that. What's the most surprising thing about being on Fox or CNN to you?
Back then, like in the 2000s, it was a lot of people, it was good for business and for our seminars and for our bus tours, because basically everybody watched TV back then, right? That was a big thing. So it was good. Now it doesn't get as much play, and you really can't hit one thing anymore to get that same pop that you did back then, because even if you're on internet, there's some people that like Joe Rogan, some like PBD, some like the Young Turks, some like, whatever. They're watching podcasts now. Some watch MSN, some watch Fox, CNN. So they're all different. Back then, it was easy to catch eyeballs because there wasn't as much
controversy.
There wasn't as much options. There wasn't as options. And when I was growing up, there was only really 3 major stations and 4 others. So now you have like 300. So even when I started real estate, you could advertise on a few stations and hit everybody. Same thing with back then.
Awesome. I love that. What is your best bucket list that you've ever accomplished?
Well, I got to say Ashley and the kids.
That's a great answer. She's going to love that. And what's your favorite vacation that you've been on with Ashley and the kids? What's your favorite destination? Like if you could go back.
You know what? It's fun just going to, it's not so much the destination. It's just like, especially right now, watching them, grow up and whatever. So it's not so much the destination, it's what you're doing. And it could be whatever. I mean, the San Diego Zoo, I don't care, whatever they're having fun at. And at this age, everything is new to them and it's cool. So
I love that. I love that. Well, I really thank you for being on here today, Ben. Cool. It's been nice. Steve has some incredible knowledge. If you want to get a hold of Steve, how can somebody get a hold of you if they want to talk to you about listing their home, or they want to talk to you more about some real estate needs that they might need some help with today?
702-375-HAWK, HAWK. And I had that number a few years ago, and then when the BlackBerry came out, it screwed all that up. And so thankfully, when Apple came with their new phone, it went back to the letters were good again. So 375-HAWK.
I love that. Really appreciate you being here. If you're curious about Steve's groundbreaking approach, or you just need a trusted partner in real estate, please reach out to him. Him and his partners over at Platinum do a great job. They get a lot of great results. And I just want to touch base on one more thing. Actually, sorry, we're going to pause that. Because you might have to clip that in. So we just got the opportunity to work together. And I had a client. This client was a DSCR buyer. That means a debt service coverage ratio buyer, where we can get them home without verifying the income. We use the rental income to get them home. I called you. I was able to get that file clear to close in 10 days. How many lenders are you seeing getting files cleared to close in 10 days without any hiccups?
Not very many. And as you know, a lot of listing agents and a lot of agents, especially right now, when a loan officer calls them and says, hey, this is my borrower, can you let your seller know this is going to close? So when Josh calls, I tell my sellers, hey, this is going to close. So if you're an agent, you want to make sure you work with a good loan officer that's going to close the deal and has a good reputation, because that is a major factor. Like when you call, the agent calls and they say, hey, my agent's calling, boom, I tell the seller this is going to close. And it's been like that for 20 years. Yeah, so that's good on your part. And it's especially important right now. If you're a buyer, you want to get with a lender that has a reputation like that. And there's not that many left out here that have that reputation. But if that loan officer calls, the loan officer is actually more important than the realtor many times. Because if a good loan officer is calling and saying, hey, I'm going to get this is the deal I'm going to get, and my buyer's going to close, you're going to push that offer and let the sellers know, hey, this is a good offer that's going to go through. And if you have a really good agent and that buyer is using an out-of-state loan officer or a loan officer you never heard of, that is going to impact, even though that's a good realtor, the loan officer is the most important part when you wanted to close the deal on time, make sure it's getting done, and make sure they get the loan, especially nowadays, because there's a lot of things that have changed with the loans, so you want a good loan officer.
I love that. Work local, work with the right loan officer. You'll have lower rates, you'll have lower fees, and you'll get home. And I think that's a great opportunity. So with that, I just want to thank you for being here today.
Cool.
Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Steve.
that was
It's a great message. I love everything that you're dropping.
We'll do a follow-up in 90 days.
If you need a loan, or if you need some financing, or you want to talk to Joshua Nieves, you can reach me at 702-580-5069. We're here to help you get home. Talk to you soon.